Hello, I'm Bianca, and today I'm going to be presenting with Belen and Estella. We will be answering the question, is it in men's nature to be sociable? We will be using the philosophers Jean-Jacques Rousseau and Aristotle.
Firstly, we can ask to ourselves to what extent can we talk about innate sociality in humans. First, we have to define society. Society, by the Cambridge Dictionary, is a large group of people who live together in an organized way and make decisions to do things right and also share the work that needs to be done. All the people that live together in a country or in several similar countries are referred to as society. A man's whole life is integrated in society. Therefore, society, as a gathering of people that is a part of a political community, is a natural predisposition. John Locke, a very well-known philosopher, in his book Second Theories of Government, said that the only way to get security for a man is by losing its freedom by joining with other men, creating a safe and comfortable society or community. Also, Aristotle that said and published his famous quote that says, "Man is by nature a social animal. An individual who is unsocial naturally and not accidentally is either beneath our notice or more than a human." So saying this means Aristotle wanted to say that it is unnatural not being a social being. Man does need others to survive, and we cannot live without it. He also believed that society is much more important than even your family or even yourself, and that society, it is a natural state to which we have to adapt to. Man realizes that he has to socialize with others, because if he stays out of society, then he is no longer a natural and reasonable being.
Men cannot live alone. As Belen said before, Aristotle states that we are natural social creatures, and therefore we depend on others to live. So even though this is the survival of the fittest, where, for example, the lion is fighting against the deer, and the lion in this case would be the fittest, we are still constantly fighting to remain in the social bubble that I'm talking about. So basically, if you think about survival of the fittest, not in animal terms, but when you think about it with individuals, the fittest is the person who is constantly working to strive their goals and uses all its resources to reach its most economical point, or the point where it's getting its most profit or whatever. So in this case, the fittest in the short term would be the person who reaches their goals, but in the long term, as you're only focusing on your own personal goals and you're leaving society aside, you no longer belong in this bubble as you wish you did. You start slowly drifting away from the bubble as society begins to project you and see how egocentric a person has become. So this can also be answered with the idea of ostracism, which is basically exclusion from a society or from a group. For the Athens, being an ostracist was the worst punishment you could have. Instead of being sent to prison or being killed, being left out and excluded from a society was the worst thing you can do to mankind, because this would lead men to be insane. Therefore, it would lead them to be antisocial. And it is said, according to them, to the Athenians, that once you are antisocial, you are no longer men. For humans, it's very important to be part of the social bubble, to be constantly getting attention from those around you, or else you will feel excluded. We depend on others for our behavior, for our social and personal necessities. So, for example, if we are in the middle of a conversation with friends, as soon as somebody ignores you or ostracizes you for 5 minutes or even less, we already start to have negative thoughts, and therefore we start pushing ourselves away from the crowd. This shows how we constantly need to feel like we are part of the crowd. Even if it's 5 minutes where you're being ostracized, we already feel like we're being ignored and like we're separated from this bubble that we want to be inside. So being socially excluded leads to unhappiness and depression. This is why it's very important to understand that men are naturally sociable.
Secondly, we can ask ourselves to what extent has society contributed to denature human beings. In fact, some philosophers believe that society has helped distort human beings because it created inequalities. In fact, when the society developed even further, those inequalities were reinforced. Rousseau is one of the philosophers that support this theory. In his discourse on the basis and the origins of the inequalities among men, he stated that in the state of of nature, men live free, happy, and independent. In fact, he believed that it's the society that has created slavery and alienation. To quote his discourse, Rousseau said that as long as men remained satisfied with their rustic cabin, they lived honest, happy, free, and independent as much as their nature will admit. Rousseau also believed that inequalities were created when one man first needed the help from another man, because suddenly one person had the advantage over another person. And since then, every man had to work in order to obtain this advantage. Nowadays, this advantage can be considered like power or money. So to conclude, Rousseau believes that men left their state of nature when they entered the society. And since they left their state of nature, they became unhappy and alienated. And that's why society has contributed to distort human beings. Marx is another philosopher that is against private property, which is one of every capitalist society main property. In fact, he believed that everything ended when one man first said that this piece of land belongs to me. For him, only the abolishment of private property will lead to give men back their own social essence and let them back in their state of nature.
As we've seen, some philosophers like Rousseau argued that it wasn't in humans' nature to socialize. However, today, we've noticed that a stateless society are only a minority, whereas almost every country has a state. Other philosophers like Aristotle believed that men couldn't live without socializing with others. Later on, scientific knowledge has answered this philosophical question. They proved that human brains are wired to interact with others. Therefore, science and philosophy are combined together to help us to respond to this question. Indeed, it is in humans' nature to be sociable.